everybody. Welcome, welcome. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, and we're going to wrap up a Bible reading for Genesis chapter 37. Then I'm going to hit the gym, and then I'm going to come back and I will do Bible study and like actually talk about what I think the readings mean. So I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday in Genesis chapter 37. Okay, got my spot here. Um, where's my other book? Welcome, everybody. Oh, here it is. I got so many books laying around. Um, welcome, welcome. Two. All right. We are ready. All right, so reading about Genesis chapter 37, we're talking about Joseph. We start off the beginning of Genesis chapter 37, Joseph being among his brothers, being among his father, and him having a lot of jealousy coming in, him having the gift of being able to describe and explain his dreams. He had dreams from God, and then he was able to understand what those dreams meant, which is kind of two separate giftings. And then he described his dreams to his brothers, and his brothers became super duper jealous, and that created a problem for him. So that's where we left off. I'm going to pick up kind of on the second half. And I'll do a reading, and then we'll take a slight break. I'm going to hit the gym, come back, and then I'll actually do more of my interpretation of it. Now his brothers went to pasture. Their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to them, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it's well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And a man asked him, welcome everybody. We're reading Genesis chapter 37, part 2, so the second half of Genesis. And I'm going to do a reading really quick. Then I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to like describe my interpretation of what it means. But welcome. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, What If. Welcome. That's a cool name. You guys make sure you subscribe really quick and make sure you like the stream. And then when I come back, I'll actually do my own interpretation of it. But, you know, time's running low and the gym's going to close. So I want to like I want to get the reading done, and then I want to come back and explain it when I have actually proper time, and then I can do like ask me anything or whatever you guys want. Yeah, we have to go to the gym. Gotta go to the gym. All right. So he said to him, "Go now, see if it's well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent them. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields, and the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I have heard them say, 'Let us go down to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of the hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit here in the wilderness. but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up, lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit, saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, it is, it's, it is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments, put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son many days. Then Jacob tore his garments, put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son many days. All of his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Welcome, everybody. We're looking at Genesis chapter 37. 37. So now let's take a look at a separate reading. I'm going to do a reading from Creation and Blessing to reference what the Bible is describing in this particular section. So I'm going to read on that as well. This one's like a couple of pages, maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 pages. But I like this book. All right, so this one starts off with, while the previous section showed how people envy the faithful, chosen servant of the Lord, this section reveals the fruit that hatred and envy, if left unchecked. The brothers tried to get rid of Joseph. It is the Cain and Abel story all over again. For all practical considerations, the brothers did destroy Joseph, for they believed they finally got rid of him. And they did their best to convince Jacob that his son was dead. Their action shows that they did not accept God's choice of Joseph. Their envy and hatred were so strong that they thought only to put an end to his dreams in the quickest way possible. 2 motives run through this part of the story: the obedience of Joseph and the hatred of the brothers. The brother's statement, "Let's see what becomes of his dreams," actually expresses the nature of Joseph's first test. What would happen to Joseph's faith in the dreams when those who over whom he was what would happen to Joseph's fate in the dreams when those over whom he was to rule sold him into slavery? Would he despair over the loss of his destiny? Or would he remain faithful to God who had chosen him? The dominant ideas in this section deal more with the human nature than the theology proper. On one hand, we have a sample of the suffering of the righteous at the hands of the wicked. On the other hand, we see the results of unchecked hatred and jealousy. Moreover, the brothers' deception of the old patriarch once again brought pain to one who was no longer a stranger to deception. The predominant theological idea, then, would be evil, both its employment and its effects. It is ironic that twice in the chapter, the treachery was blamed on the evil beast. This part of the story of Joseph unfolds in several small scenes that work together to develop the crisis. In each step, the participants and speakers differ. The actions of the family are framed by the verb to send, salah. Jacob sent Joseph to his brothers, and they sent his bloody coat back to him. In between are the details of the movement from one sending to the other. The critical point comes when the brothers debated which blood they should have to account for. By selling Joseph, they were free from having to cover his blood, and instead could simply use the blood of a goat. The unit ends with a transitional report of another sale, this time to Potiphar in Egypt. So in verse 12 through 14, we see the action that Israel, Salah, Joseph is to inquire his brother's welfare. When Jacob sent Joseph to check on the welfare of his brothers plotted to kill him and end his dreams, but decided rather to sell him and deceive their father into thinking an evil beast devoured him. In spite of the painful success of their plan, however, Joseph was alive and well in Egypt. Joseph, in obedience to Israel's request, went to inquire of the welfare of his brothers in Shechem, and with the help of certain man, found them in Dothan. Israel sent to Shechem to see about the welfare of his brothers and their flocks. Joseph obediently traveled to Shechem and, with the help of a man, was able to trace them to Dothan. Joseph's brothers conspired to kill him when they saw him coming, but ended up selling him into slavery instead at the advice of Judah. Joseph's brothers plotted to kill him to end his dreams. They conspired to kill him when they saw him coming. They planned to say an evil beast devoured him, and then would see what would become of his dreams. Reuben urged his brothers not to kill Joseph for practical and personal reasons. Reuben urged his brothers not to lay a hand on him or shed his blood. Reuben urged them not to kill Joseph because he was planning to deliver his brother. Joseph's brothers stripped him and threw him into an empty cistern, but then, at the advice of Judah, sold him to some Midianites who were going down to Egypt. Joseph suffered at the hands of his brothers, who stripped him and threw him into an empty cistern. Judah urged his brothers to sell Joseph for profit when Ishmaelite traders passed by their camp. Joseph again suffered at the hands of his brothers as they sold him into Egypt. Jacob and his entire family suffered as a result of the deeds and the deception of the brothers. Reuben returned to the cistern and grieved when he failed to find Joseph there. Joseph's brothers succeeded in deceiving Jacob into believing that Joseph was dead. Joseph's brothers prepared his tunic by dipping it in blood in order to deceive their father. Jacob was deceived into believing that Joseph was devoured by some evil beast. Jacob mourned the loss of Joseph and refused to be comforted by his family. Joseph was sold to Potiphar in Egypt. The story progresses from the faithfulness of Joseph to the treachery of the brothers, to the deception of the brothers, to the epilogue about Joseph's well-being. Since the thrust of the passage is on the evil of the brothers, I would join the first two sections contrasting Joseph's faithfulness with the brothers' treachery. Obedient servants who faithfully keep their charge may suffer persecution from those who are disobedient. The first section provides a setting for the treachery. Israel naively decided to send Joseph to Shechem to see if all was well, shalom, with his brothers. It should be noted that this incident parallels the beginning of the preceding unit, in which Joseph brought back a report of his brothers. Perhaps the evil report of the earlier mission prompted Jacob to send Joseph on this one. The repetition of the word welfare, shalom, in the wording of this commission provides an ominous link to the preceding section. Joseph was sent to see about the welfare, shalom, but they hated him so much that they were not able to speak peaceably with him. The mission seemed doomed from the start. Joseph went in obedience to his father's commission. Salah is used twice to stress that he was sent. Obedience was the mark of Joseph, no matter what prospects lay on him. In contrast to other commission speeches, Joseph offered no objections at all. A few verses that report the meeting of a man in Shechem who directed him to Dothan are a bit perplexing. This interlude has a brief exposition, an exchange of speeches, and then the resolution. Joseph must have said more to the man than the text records. As B. Jacob notes, the Bible has him speak with moving ambiguity. I am seeking my brothers. A sentence that reflects the soul of Joseph and of the whole story. The incident retards the progress of the narrative, showing further diligence on the part of Joseph to find his brothers, who were not where they were supposed to be, and bring back the report to his father. Perhaps this section was designed to show how helpless Joseph was away from his father. He was wandering in a field. And then, when he found his brothers, he was 12 miles farther away from his father. The text moves quickly to the plot of the brothers to prevent Joseph's dreams from being fulfilled. The crisis is somewhat similar to the plans of Isaac to give the blessing to one who did not figure in God's plan. This crisis was far more serious, however, for rather than attempt to channel the blessing to the wrong person, the participants planned to destroy the brother to whom it apparently belonged. The words of the initial plan are worth noting in some detail. The speech begins and ends with a contemptuous reference to the dreams. Look, here comes this dreamer, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. The plan was to slay him, Harag, and throw him, Salak, into some pit, and then to lie about their crime. An evil beast has devoured him. Except for the slaying of Joseph, this plan was carried out. The plan was changed by Reuben, who was hoping to deliver Joseph to his father. Was Reuben hoping to regain favor after his folly with his father's concubines? Whatever his motives were, his speech was commendable, corrective of his brother's plan. He exhorted them not to kill the lad. Do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is the wilderness, but lay no hand on him. The speech is made memorable by the repetition of the sounds between the verbs sapak, salak, and salah. The advice was accepted. The brothers stripped Joseph of the tunic his father had given him and threw him into the empty pit. Remarkably, the brothers then sat down to eat bread. It is ironic that they had planned to say that an evil beast had devoured Joseph. After they attacked him, they sat down to eat. The text thus signifies what evil beast attacked Joseph. But then a new plan came to the brothers' attention, thanks to Judah. His speech, the third of the brothers' decisions, called for the sale of Joseph. He asked, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood?" With this first sign, they acknowledged Joseph as their brother. With this first sign that they acknowledged Joseph as their brother, came another, more convincing recognition of the kinship. He is our brother and our flesh. Although this speech was designed to lessen their crime by selling their brother rather than murdering him, it ultimately underscored how wicked their deed was. They sold their brother, their own flesh and blood. Joseph was thus treated harshly by his brothers, but was preserved alive. The text passes over his suffering, concentrating on the brothers' wickedness. They all were involved in the crime, even Reuben and Judah. They were all in opposition to the divine plan. The narrator later introduces the motive of Joseph's pleas for mercy from the empty cistern. Those who would destroy the righteousness find it necessary to deceive others about their sin, but succeed only in causing grief. The plan of the sons was to say that an evil beast devoured Joseph. The plan of the sons to say that an evil beast devoured Joseph had to be carried out once Reuben discovered that they had sold the lad. His initial response was anxiety. He tore his clothes and lamented his dilemma. Apparently, as the oldest of the brothers, a certain amount of responsibility lay with him. More important, though, his plan to deliver Joseph had been foiled. All that was left now was to deceive the father. The theme of the deception thus appears once again in the family traditions. The deceiver, Jacob, was being deceived by his sons. Ironically, his sons dipped Joseph's tunic in the blood of a kid of the goats to deceive their father into thinking that Joseph was dead. It was with two kids of the goats, Ezim, that Jacob deceived his father Isaac. The brothers sent answers Wayasalhu answers the initial commission of Joseph, who was sent to them, the garment to their father, and brought it to him with a degree of callousness that would come only from their hatred. This have we found. Recognize now whether it be your son's tunic or not. No longer do they speak of their brother or their flesh. It is now your son. The response of Jacob was predictable. He recognized it. His conclusion was exactly what they had conspired to promote. Perhaps under the prompting, Jacob concluded that an evil beast devoured Joseph. Joseph was undoubtedly torn to pieces. The repetition in the construction suggests that this outburst was a form of lament. The text affirms such a conclusion, and Jacob tore his clothes. Jacob's cry of lament forms the low point of the Joseph story. From here on there could only be healing and reconciliation. It is interesting to observe the extent of Jacob's mourning for Joseph. Now he refused to be comforted, resigning himself to go to his grave in mourning over Joseph. One recalls how after Isaac was deceived by Jacob, Esau sought to console himself by planning to kill Jacob, the deceiver. This episode, even though sad for Jacob, is another example of reaping what was sown. A family that so easily deceives to win their way cannot hope for anything but pain and grief. The brothers succeeded in their plan. They got rid of Joseph, but they also succeeded in causing inconsolable grief and bitter pain in the family. In spite of the persecution and deception, God's program will continue. The final verse of the chapter is short but critical. It reports that Joseph was sold into slavery and was with Potiphar. He was not an ordinary field slave, but had already entered a place of higher responsibility. The verse stands in remarkable contrast to the grief in Hebron and to the brothers' attempts to destroy him and end his dreams. This chapter in the story of Joseph is one of treachery and deception. It centers on Joseph, the faithful son, but is essentially about the brothers who sought to rid themselves of the favored son and perhaps open the way for a better status for themselves. But the blessing does not go to such as do these things. Moreover, God's choice of a leader cannot be so easily altered. The message could be worded either from the perspective of the righteous who suffer or from the perspective of the envious brothers. Since it is all the story of Joseph, the expositor would do well to make him the focal point. The unit teaches that God's faithful servant may suffer devastating persecution from those who hate him or her, who deceive others about their persecution, and whose evil deeds cause great grief, but will survive to fulfill his or her destiny in God's program. In short, those who faithfully serve their master often must endure grievous persecution, but cannot be prevented from fulfilling their God-given destiny. In this chapter, the destiny was revealed through the dreams when the brothers sought to kill Joseph and see what became of his dreamed destiny. A strange set of circumstances and voices of moderation worked to deliver Joseph alive to Egypt, where he eventually fulfilled his destiny. Far from preventing Joseph's dream, his brothers actually became the agents of fulfilling it. In the New Testament, Paul cataloged the persecutions and sufferings that he had to endure in his service for God. In all his trials and tribulations, he did not lose heart because he kept his sight on the goal that was set before him, as must every believer who desires to fulfill God's will. In spite of envy, hatred, and even persecution from others, the spiritual leader can rest assured that if God has chosen him for her task, no amount of opposition can nullify that destiny. Rather, God may use the opposition in working out his will. What an awesome read from the author Alan P. Ross, Creation and Blessings, on Genesis chapter 37. You guys, I want you to hold your questions until I come back. I'm going to do a little Bible study when I come back from the gym. That's what I'm going to do. But the gym closes in like an hour and a half, so I don't want to miss it. And I got to wrap my Friday with some exercise. So, yeah, so yeah, guys, hold your questions. I'll come back and I will take your questions and I'll also just kind of talk through my interpretation of Genesis chapter 37. So, hope you guys hang out with me. Join me when I come back in like an hour and a half around, I will say 9:15 Eastern time. I'll be back live again. So wherever time zone you're in, hop back in, put your notifications on, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss us when we talk about actually discuss the chapter. When we're finished, I'll let you guys ask your questions, and you can ask me anything. Okay, bye everybody.